make your day richer than it was before. Got some good times knocking upon your front door. It's the Richard Wilmore Show.
It's real, like, to try to explain what growing up on a border city is so complicated because that's the abstract concept. You're basically living Mexican culture in American soil, right? So, like, to put it bluntly, I didn't realize how much of a minority I was until I went to college in Austin, and I was like, wait,
where'd you come from?
Where did you come from? Yeah. There's a strong sense of, like, the community itself is very much dominated by Mexican culture and idealisms, you know, that are very true to the Mexican people, but we're living in America, and it's this amalgam of the two that can be really difficult to navigate. It was interesting because growing up, like, I wanted nothing more than to be as American and white as possible, you know? I wanted to distance myself from that, and it took leaving to realize the beauty of what I had. And now, coming back to a city like San Antonio, because I grew up in Laredo, went to college in Austin, lived in Houston for a handful of years, and now in San Antonio, coming back to a place that has that rich culture, now I'm appreciating it. Like, only in the past 2 years have I started to listen to, like, Latin music and, you know, like, really seek out Latin artists of all sorts of, through all sorts of mediums. Whereas growing up, I was like, I'm literally trying to be as white as possible. Like, stayed out of the sun, straightened my hair.
Really?
Like,
that, like, extreme?
Yeah, it was this idea of, like, I want to be an American, you know, and I want to fit in with other Americans. And it really took quite a number of years to understand the beauty of America is the melting pot that it is, and it is this mashup of identities that creates this uniqueness of this country.
So you must feel, I guess that's probably taken a long time to, like, be comfortable with yourself then. Like, how has your life changed now that you don't want to be white anymore?
You know, it's interesting because it's like, I do identify very much as a Mexican, but I identify very much as an American, you know, and it's living in this intersection and not being ashamed of either side of it. For so long, especially, like, growing up into my college years, it was like trying to figure out where I fit, you know, and trying to fit into a place. And now it's like that, like, the place has to conform to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to be me, whatever that may be. And everyone around me can deal with it or not. Yeah.
I think that's what I have also found, like, I'm gonna be me, and then I'll find my tribe. I don't have to, I'll find me, I don't necessarily have to, like, conform to be someone else's.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, if I like something, I feel like someone else is going to like it too, so you just have to find them.
Yeah. It's the same kind of navigation, I think, that happens in trying to figure out your sexuality and what your queerness is, especially over the course of the last 30 years and how different it was 15 years ago to now. You know, just be you and let everyone else kind of, like, react.
Yeah.
You know.
And either they're going to like it or they're not. Who cares?
And at the end of the day, are you sleeping with them? No,
Right.
so what's the matter?
Right. And half of them we don't have to look at.
Yeah.
What was that like? When did you come out, and when did you realize that you were different? That's what I always say.
Right.
Something was there, but I'm not quite sure what it was.
Fairly early. It was, like, I want to say end of middle school-ish. And then started coming out early high school, like freshman, sophomore year, to like friends, close friends first, and then I really did have like a all kind of attitude. Like in high school and middle school, I grew up in like the punk rock hardcore scene, and so it really was a like world, we're gonna do our own thing. So definitely took liberties in my expression of self, so it wasn't necessarily a surprise like, oh, the kid that wears eyeliner and paints his nails is, not straight. Big surprise, right? Yeah. And then kind of around sophomore, junior year, came out to my parents, not on purpose, as a lot of times it happens. They just kind of found out. And it was interesting because, again, growing up in that kind of Mexican tradition, like family comes first, and so definitely the message that was relayed to me at first was, we love you, you're our son, nothing's going to change that, but we don't agree with this, so we need to talk about it, and I'm lucky enough to have two very incredible parents. My mother is very much a researcher, and so if there's something that she doesn't know or doesn't understand, she will look into it heavily. And so she did. She really, really did. And then in that shared her findings with my father and kind of brought him along for the journey. And, by the time, I was a few years in college, like they'd come visit me and be like, yeah, this is my boyfriend, hi, And now it's like, I'm married, they came to my wedding, like we have a very great relationship, and the rest of my family knows, and it's kind of like okay, so,
yeah. I feel like, I've always said this, I don't know if it's just me or other people, but I feel like coming out is one of those things where you don't want it to be a big deal, but kind of secretly you do.
Yeah.
Like, you want people to be shocked because you've been trying so hard not to be. And then when everyone's like, like my mom started crying, I was like, why are you crying? And she goes, because I've been waiting since you were 3. And I'm like, oh, well, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah, why didn't you?
We could have talked about this a lot.
I was so confused.
I know.
You had the
answer.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's weird.
So it's one of those things where like I want to be my own gay pride parade, but at the same time, like, can we just like keep rolling like nothing's different, because nothing's different, and it was one of those things where like within my family dynamic it was much smoother, I think, than coming out within the community as a whole. Obviously my close friends were one thing, but like the mentality that it was 15 years ago did not make it easy, And I think that was one of the main things that like was expressed to me, especially from my mom, was, we just want you to be safe, and this is, it's not safe for people like you out there. Luckily, when I left home, I went to Austin, which is like the blue mecca of Texas, or at least it was, like 15 years ago. I feel like more and more other spaces are becoming much more accepting, like Houston. And even Dallas, which is strange. Not to diss on Dallas.
Oh, you didn't say San Antonio once.
I've never... Here's the thing about San Antonio. I have never really felt uncomfortable in this city because this city has a strong sense of community. So it was never a thing, I never had to think about it. Because every time I've come here, and especially now living here, I've always surrounded myself with my people, and so I've never felt that kind of like unsafeness about it. Sure, there's definitely a lot of like machismo happening, but there's also a lot of like, kind of attitude, like, are you hurting me? Like, you do you, me do me. That's such an interesting dynamic of the South, I think, in general, where people just try to be like copacetic with each other as long as what you're doing isn't affecting me and mine in any way.
It's the tiniest big city I've ever lived in. It's the strangest thing.
Yeah.
You meet in any sort of little community. I meet an actor and I say, oh, I am going to have this actor on my show. They go, oh yeah, I did this movie with them, and then I did that.
Yeah.
I went to a theater award ceremony one night, and I turned around, and there were like 6 people. Oh yeah, I know that person. I'm like,
Yeah.
how?
When I was growing up in Laredo, I kind of had an idea of every city, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this. So like I moved to Austin and thought, if I leave Austin, I'm leaving Texas, because where else would I want to live? Dallas is full of Houston is just full of and San Antonio is basically 20 Laredos crammed into one. So why would I want to be there? And it is that mentality of like, it's the 7th largest city, if not bigger now, in the country, but you feel a sense of community here like you would in a small town. You know, like everybody knows everybody in some way. Especially like the niche communities, you know, like poets, actors, painters, the rock community, the hip hop community, like they all are so tightly woven that it's there's a strong sense of support, and there's also a strong sense of like the community kind of has each other's back, except the gay community. They can be kind of queens.
I feel like you have your hand in all of those baskets. Like
A little bit.
You are a very busy person.
Yeah.
How'd you get so busy?
I think I don't want to say I complain about it, but like I start to gripe about it to my husband, and then we both come to the realization that if it wasn't that way, I'd be tearing my hair out. You know, I've always been an interdisciplinary kind of person, and I think that comes with being a Gemini. I can't make a decision, so I just go for everything. My background's in theater, and through that I found poetry as a form of expression, and then I do makeup for a living, and then I love music, and so it was one of those things where like I need to have it all in my life in order to be happy, you know? I can't just pigeonhole myself into one thing. So in that, it does kind of stretch me thin sometimes, but I feel like it gives me the knowledge and the resources to be able to be a part of different communities and to help others that are coming up in different areas. So kind of like a project that my husband and I have, we've started a house, kind of modeled as a drag house, in the house mom and all of that, and the children and whatnot. But it isn't pigeonholed into drag. You know, we do have like a drag child, but we also have someone in our house that's a poet like myself, me that does a little bit of all of it, my husband who is more of a dancer and has a background in burlesque. So it does kind of give us this ability to morph, you know, and fit into different areas. And each of us have our own kind of expertise, and that allows us to help each other in different ways, you know. Like, I don't really know anything about drag, but I know about performance, you know, and I know about makeup. So in building up our little drag child, like, we're able to offer different perspectives, and I think that's what makes us stronger as a unit, you know. It's called the House of Vane, V-A-Y-N-E. My husband's stage name is Bruce Vane. So I know he's a comic book nerd for sure. So it's something to where we believe like there needs to be a standard of excellence, you know, and we need to take pride in our community and the work that we do, and how do we continue to elevate that above, you know, whatever like cattiness there might be, or a lower standard in terms of the caliber of art. Like, we need to help each other, and so that's what we're trying to build with that. And I think it's only possible through this collaboration of different disciplines and different backgrounds, you know.
Is that what you think has to kind of change the most about that in San Antonio? Or is there more than that? I'm assuming there's more than that.
I mean, I'm sure we could go into everything that, you know, San Antonio isn't perfect. Of course, no place is, you know, and to think that like a place like Austin, as wonderful as it is like a mecca, is just false, you know. I think there is a strong, looking at it just in like the drag culture of this city, there is a strong sense of competition and cattiness, and like, you can be good but not better than me. That like is sad to see in the queer community when the queer community has faced so much adversity, you know, to get to where we are.
Yeah.
You know, and we really need to take this approach of like, when one of us wins, all of us win. So that's a huge thing that I see in the community that is a turnoff for me. You know, I don't personally go down to the strip very often unless it is to like support my child. Because you feel that like cattiness, it's in the air, and that doesn't sit well with me. But like they say, to change something, you kind of have to be in it. You have to change it from within. It's very hard to come from the outside and try and fix, or not fix, but you know, morph something into something better. So that's a huge part of it. The other part of it, I think, is elevating the actual art that we're, the quality of the art that we're putting out there. You know, I think none of us can feel like we've made it, you know, and that we are at our peak or that we are the best, because that isn't true. You know, we're all constantly on this continuum, you know, and we continue to grow and learn. And I do get the sense that there are people out there that feel like, you know, I'm the and can't nobody clock me, can't nobody tell me nothing. And that's not true, you know, and there's a humbleness that I think is missing.
That's funny, because it's also the response that I get from comedians about other comedians and actors about like, those need to like slower roll and be excited for where we are and what we're doing, and then help someone else. Like, be happy for someone else too.
And be open to give somebody else the spotlight, you know, and be open to like somebody telling you like, you know, you're not all that, you know, and not from a place of like, I'm trying to bring you down, but I have ideas and let's work together, you know?
Yeah. We're going to take a break. There's 700 things I want to talk to you about, like the new book. We'll be right back right after this and after I press record again.
Ding!
Stacey Andon Coaching. The world needs your flavor of magic. Visit us at staceyandon.com. If you could describe yourself in 3 words, what would it be?
No.
Yeah?
Didn't we mention the Gemini thing?
Yeah.
There's decisions.
Because I don't want to talk about them, so.
Let me see. I had to do that recently for work. What did I put down? Creative. For a poet, words are escaping me right now.
We're like 20 minutes. Remember, then we're taking another break.
Good. I would describe myself as good.
I'm nice.
Yeah. Creative. Driven. And congenial.
Let's start with creative.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
No, I mean, obvious that you're very creative. So I'm glad you're not, that's a word that you would use, because you definitely are. You just wrote a book, speaking of creative.
So the book is
We should put this book up. Talk about it.
It is a collection of poems that I've written.
Okay.
And so I would say they are separate, because I write poems. I think I write poems. One of the reasons I do is because I can be a bit squirrel, you know. And so for me to sit down and create a body of work like a novel, I think my head would explode, you know, because there's so many intricacies to it, and I'm able to better wrap myself over a shorter art form. So I create the poems individually. And so this book, even though I've like really sat down and like hunkered down to create it in the past 6 months, came about through 6 years of writing, you know. And so I started to look at everything that I had created over the past 6 years and identify common themes, identify a narrative, and so that's where the creation of the book started to happen. It's like, okay, here's what I've been saying for the past 6 years. What am I really saying? And can I put that in a collection that tells a cohesive story and has a thesis, has a thorough line that somebody, if you sat down and read it from cover to cover, there is an arc, there is a narrative. And the answer was yes. So that's what really drove it to like put it together as a book. I had great help. This book wouldn't have happened if one of my friends, Rooster Martinez, hadn't like sat down and helped me wrap my head around it, and helped me kind of put it together. Because sometimes I can be so scatterbrained that it's hard for me to put the pieces back together. So I'm really proud of this and how it turned out. So yeah, there's that.
You went to school for theater. Did you? Like, I also went to school for theater, but I never really did theater.
No. Did you? Yes. I did theater my whole life. From elementary school on. And obviously that's what I was going to do. I'm going to be an actor. Nothing can stop me. And then life did. I kind of lost myself in college there, and developed, that's an interesting choice of words, became a drug addict, as one does.
As you do.
As you do.
College in Austin.
And life fell apart, and I had to like put the pieces back together. But theater was my passion, and acting has always been my passion. And I've continued to be able to do it after college, just not as frequently as I would like to. I think since college I've done less than 10 shows, and that's in the past 10 years.
Do you see a lot of shows here? 'Cause there's some great theater.
There is. I try to. I really do try to go out. I have not been the best at it.
I'm inviting you next time. I go out all the time to theater. I love theater.
Yeah.
We have some great.
We do. I feel like the only ones I've frequented, I've patroned, are the Woodlawn Theater, and then it was the Overtime Theater, and so I need to get out more. I know there's the Public,
The
Classic, yeah, that was the other one.
The Vex.
The Vex, who just did Cabaret, and I missed it.
The Roxy Theater right down the street.
Don't know that one. So I need to get out more. I just recently finished working with the Woodlawn. We did In the Heights.
Yeah.
So that was a great passion project.
What did you do with them?
I was Graffiti Pete.
I was out of town while I never saw it. It's like the one show that I didn't see.
I was Graffiti Pete in that production, and the reason I went for it was because we did it last year in Laredo, and I played the role of Usnavi there. And that role, I'll be totally honest, I was that person that was like, oh yeah, that other play by Lin-Manuel, right? And so they reached out to me and they were like, we're putting on In the Heights. Like, I know you live in San Antonio, but like, come do this. And I was like, okay, sure. So I started to like research the show itself, listen to the music, and learn the history of the show and all of that. And it became, honestly, one of like top 5 things I've ever done in my life. Like the heart of that production, and for me especially, like being able to go back to my hometown and do it there when there's such a strong sense of home and community in that show, like pulled me in ways that I don't think could have in other doing it anywhere else. And I still remember like closing night, like the final song of the production, like all of us on stage were bawling. Like we were in tears because of the emotion that we had put into the show and what the show meant for us. I remember the moment like I was about to start the last speech of the last rap essentially in the closing number, and I turn over to look at a dancer because we'd always make this eye contact when she comes out, and I look at her and single tear rolling down her eye, and that was it. Like I was like, I'm not recovering from this. And so I just start crying. Another girl that comes in and starts singing, she's not even singing, she's just on stage like it was such an emotional show. And so to get the chance to do it again here was an opportunity that I wasn't going to pass up on, and obviously the roles of Usnavi and Graffiti Pete are totally different in the show, and it was so interesting to see it from that different lens and from that different character. And that also goes back to the idea that I was talking about earlier about being humble. Like, I could have easily just been like, I played the lead last summer, I'm not going to take this small bit role, but it was like, I'm like, just to be a part of something, and the experience, what I learned from that experience was totally different from what I got from doing it last summer you know, in the role of Usnavi. So like being open to any experience that life throws at you.
There's something great about the camaraderie in theater.
Yeah.
It's so, when they did The Wizard of Oz, like, my favorite movie of all time is The Wizard of Oz. I have Wizard of Oz tattoo. I was Dorothy when I was, like, for Halloween. I have one...
Noticed.
Yeah. I have one female cousin, and my mom made all of our Halloween costumes, and we were The Wizard of Oz one year. And I have one female cousin, and I made her be the lion so I could be Dorothy.
Oh, okay.
It's real shocking. And I went to Chris, and I was like, I want to be in the show, but I don't really want a role. Like, I just want to be, like, in the background somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, I will move stuff. I was like, I mean, I guess we could figure it out, and then I never did. But that's such a great family there. Chris is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm good friends with Jeanette, their marketing person. We take her out for coffee. Or usually she takes me out for coffee. And she's always like, yeah, come to, like, we need your show. Let's go. Like, I'm going to interview the cast of Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yes.
Poetry in San Antonio.
Yes. There's lots of it.
I didn't even realize.
There's a ton.
Where do you think that comes from?
Well, you know, San Luis Cisneros lived here for...
People just have
They do. We do. I think that's one of the beauties of the Mexican culture. A lot of it is like, you know, this oral tradition and our stories. There's a very strong writers community. Actually, next year, 2020, the largest, what's the word I'm looking for? Convention of writers in the country is going to be hosting their national convention in San Antonio. So there is a lot. It's kind of like that small town feel where like you have to seek for it. You know, it's not kind of like in your face all over the place. So that's one of the hard things about the community is that it's so tight knit that it's a lot of the same people all over the place. And like, how do we get the word out there and bring new people who maybe like yourself didn't even know that it existed, right? How do we get the word out and start to bring in new voices? And that's what we're going to try with this slam, and hopefully it'll work.
What is it?
So it's going to be first and third Fridays at The Roost on Broadway. It's right by the Pearl. We'll be starting on the third Friday of July, 7:30. Sign-up list goes up, 8 o'clock we start. And it is a poetry slam. I don't know if you're familiar with what that is, but maybe for your viewers, that may not
I was
be.
not until I moved here, and then I went to a couple.
Yes, here in town?
Yeah.
Cool. So for the past 20 years, there's been one. There might have been a few that popped up here and there, but there's been one consistent one, which is Puro Slam on Tuesday nights. That happens very late at night. Usually gets started at like 10:30, and it's in a bar. And there's this punk rock attitude about it that I absolutely love, but that can be a turnoff for people that maybe don't like that abrasiveness to it, you know. So Poetry Slam, to sum it up, it's a trick we play on people to get them to come listen to poetry. You know, everything has to have a spin, right? A gimmick. And so that's what Poetry Slam really is. It started as a gimmick where poets compete in a series of rounds. It's all original work, no props, no costumes, no animal acts or musical instruments, and they are judged like the Olympics on a scale of 0.0 to 10.0 by 5 randomly selected members of the audience. You know, so the night begins by finding judges, and they are the judges for the evening. You don't need to have any sort of background or expertise. The idea is like everyone has an opinion. Let's hear, you know, the audience's opinion through these judges. Typically, you drop the high score and the low score. The 3 in the middle give you your score for the poem. After a series of rounds, you have winners. So it's a competition, but like I said, it's a game we play to get people to listen. You know, how do we get? Because oftentimes, like, you tell someone like, yeah, come out to this poetry reading we're doing. They're like, yeah, I've got better ways to spend my Friday night, right? But by making it this interaction between the audience and the poets, it elevates the show, you know, and it makes it more enticing and engaging. To where it was starting in the 80s, now it's this huge thing. There are regional and national competitions all around the country. We just got back from one that happened in Fayetteville, North Carolina. A couple years ago, our team the San Antonio team took third place at the National Slam in group piece competition. So there's so many facets to it, and it's how I started in poetry because, like I said, my background was always in theater, and my idea was always like, I don't write my own stuff. Give me a script and I'll perform them. I don't write it, and I also didn't know that poetry could be what slam showed me it could be. And it wasn't until I hosted an event for queer people of color, and one of the performers was a poet that competed in slam. I don't like to use the term slam poet, because slam is not a genre, slam is an event. So poet that competed in slam. And so I got to know him because I was going to introduce him, and we ended up becoming best friends. But I was like, all right, fine, so I'm going to introduce this poet, Christopher Lee, everybody make some noise, whatever. He goes up, first words out of his mouth, my is contagious, and you can't contain this beast with two hands. And I was like, what? This is poetry?
Wow.
And it is. That's the beauty of slam, that it gives you the freedom to express yourself in whichever way, form, thought, content you want to express yourself. And I appreciated that so much that I started writing and haven't stopped since. So
you have to release books about it.
yeah, this is my second book, and I could not be prouder. In putting together this book, what I found was a common theme of identity and how we identify ourselves and what that means to us, and this strong sense of patriotism. The book is called Otro Patria, which stands for Other Patriot. And how the pride that we have can sometimes come in conflict with our identity, and how where we live and what people tell us about our identity, how we should feel about that identity, can sometimes come in contrast with our pride. And so just trying to analyze that and just bring compassion to this idea of being other, and shine light on the fact that just because we're from somewhere else or we identify as something else does not mean that we're still part of this community.
What do you love about San Antonio?
The people.
Yeah.
The food. The people, for sure. That's one of the things that I've always said about San Antonio. Because people try and tell me, okay, what's better, Austin or Houston? What's better, Austin or San Antonio? Or San Antonio or Houston? I'm like, each has their own thing that makes them great, and also their own thing that makes them suck. But the people in San Antonio are one of the things that I love because of that sense of community.
What do you love about being married? How has that changed you?
Marriage is a journey.
I'm divorced, so yes.
Yeah. I'm not and will not be.
Good. No, it isn't fun.
What do I love about being married? How it has challenged me in my communication, and how it has challenged me in selflessness and the idea of a unit and what that means, because I don't think I knew what that meant until I was married, which is, my husband often says, we went about this backwards. We got married and then we figured out how to make our relationship work. Because it was like, we're married, we're gonna make this work, and we are. It's wonderful. But it was this challenge of like, all my life I've kind of been very independent, and the relationships that I've always been in have been kind of like a tag along to the Chibbi show and whatever that is. And now it's like, I married a person who I was so attracted to because of their independence and their expression. So now it's like, how do we balance being both, and how do both be a unit? We have a hashtag if anyone wants to follow our lives on Instagram. The hashtag is Beyonce and Gay-Z. Because that's how we see ourselves. We are both two very independent, hardworking, creative individuals that come together as a unit, and we're stronger because of it. And navigating that has changed how I live my life.
Did you think when you were little that you would get married? I always thought I would be single. Like, I just never thought about it. I thought I'd be single and I'd have 12,000 kids. I don't know how I thought that was going to work.
That can still be your reality. I think I always did. I think I always aspired to grow, to have a relationship like my parents. I think to have a family eventually. My husband keeps pushing us to have kids, and I'm like, will, just now is not the right time, you know.
We can practice, but we're not having kids.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the blessings of, you know, being in a queer relationship. Like, you can choose when to have kids.
You get to make that decision.
Yes, and not to say that, you know, heteronormative relationships don't get to make that decision, but sometimes that decision gets made by accident, you know. So I think I always did see myself having a family, having a relationship, growing old together. Being like, I sometimes sit there and be like, he's gonna make such an adorable old man. He is. So yeah.
That's great. I'm so happy for you. I don't know you at all, but I think you're great.
We try to set an example, you know, and I think that too. So to give some backstory, like my husband and I were married at a poetry event. Because that was of course, that was our community in Houston. Those were our people. It was the show that I helped start and that I regularly hosted, and I went to my friend who helped run it and was like, how would you feel about, because he was also ordained, how would you feel about marrying us at right about now? And it was the most beautiful thing I could have ever asked for, to just be surrounded by this community, and that really forced us to see not just how we see ourselves, but how the world sees us. And then it's kind of put pressure on us to, like, we have to live up to the expectation that the world has put on us, because we've put out this presentation of who we are as a unit and what that means. So we got to do the work, you know, and I'm glad to say that we have. And
how long have you been married?
A little over 2 years, 2.5 years. We've been together for 5. We've known each other. We met in college like over 10 years ago.
Oh.
And then went our separate ways. We didn't have a relationship then, but we kept in the know of each other's lives, and then reconnected 5 years ago. He was living in San Antonio, I was living in Houston, and it happened.
Is that what brought you here?
No, that's what brought him there.
Oh.
He moved to Houston for the relationship, and then my job brought me here. I got a promotion, so we moved back. Much to his dismay, he has left San Antonio so many times with the will of like, never again, and something keeps pulling him back. And I think that's the driving force. He's like, if I'm going to be in the city, I am going to make a change in this city. We are going to make a change in this city and elevate what this city can be, because it has the potential to be great, and I think it often gets overlooked. We found that in the poetry community, we found that in going to like national competitions where people are like, oh, San Antonio, like they're cool, they're good people, but like, we don't have to worry about them as competition. And a few years ago we changed that. We were like, yes, you do. There's talent here that needs to be recognized. There's a voice that needs to be heard, and we're going to project it.
That's why yes, there's so much talent here. We already talked about that, and every time someone's on my show, they're like, I'm so glad you have this. Like, nobody has anywhere to go to talk about it.
Yeah.
And there's so much happening here, and no one's talking about it. Someone, I think it was Jeanette from the Woodlawn, said to me, unless you're the Spurs or Fiesta, no one's coming out for you. She's like, everybody has a hard time selling tickets and getting an audience, because...
How do you convince people to care?
I don't know.
You know? And I think that is the importance of having a diversity of voices out there, because there is this sense of like, you need to touch people in issues that relate to them, that move them in some way. I try to address that in the book in identifying how like what makes us different is actually what makes us the same. You know, my struggle as a queer immigrant Latinx person is the same as your struggle. You know, even if you're not queer Latinx immigrants, you know, like we have commonalities in our struggles, and it takes all of our voices coming together to really make a change and a difference.
That's why I love my show, because I get to meet a bunch of random people, and then you figure out that like we're all just here hanging out together. Like we just gotta try to get through it together without killing each other.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a picture on our way out.
Okay.
Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We found out that we're practically neighbors.
Yes.
We hang out all the time now. Now, I bought this at the dollar store, so sometimes it doesn't work.
Let's see.
So we're gonna see, and then sometimes right before I take the picture, we'll go this way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, put your.
We're gonna put this right there.
Ready?
Boom.
Okay, it worked.
It worked.
Take one more. Okay, just in case.
There we go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. I will. You too. I'm going to perform. Are you?